Hi, I'm Benjamin Angwin, an American living in Britain. I've been here for most of 20 years, and this is my home now in Wales. And yet, when I walk around British cities now, it is undeniable. The economic decay, the demographic decline, and especially the social decay. The lack of any sense of unity, the lack of understanding how great this island was. It's sad. I don't want to be derogatory towards these islands where much of my ancestry comes from, but how far Britain has fallen has made me wonder, history never ends. So if Britain is not going to be a major European power in the future due to its imported ethnic divisions, its lack of sticking up for its own interests, like giving away island territories to potential enemies, not even defending its own indigenous religion, well, which countries in Europe are going to take the place? Because history doesn't end. Powers rise and fall, and in one region where a power falls, like, for instance, when Persia disintegrated, the Ottomans took advantage of that. History happens. When the Ottomans disintegrated or began to grow weaker, Russia took advantage of that, as did Poland in some ways. But what I'm getting at is, who in Europe's going to take the place of Britain? Will it be France? Well, potentially France, but they've imported these same ethnic divisions, and they've built up this philosophy around postmodernism, which weakens the unity of a society. And both Britain and France have this strange idea that nationalism is somehow evil and bad, when that's literally what stopped the Nazis. And oddest of all, Germany has this eternal guilt trip hanging around its neck, which means that we may be witnessing the early stages of the end of Germany. I hope not. But Poland, that's what this video is about. I think Poland has a really good chance to take the stage. You do not have to have been a great power in the past to be a great power in the future, but it certainly helps. And Poland has been a great power in the past. Just look at this map of what Poland was. Poland is almost exceptionally unique among the larger European nations in that it vanished from the map entirely, twice. You could say 3 times, but it's complicated. However, certainly for most of 123 years, whilst other powers, Germany was solidifying, Russia, the British Empire, France, these massive powers were growing. Poland wasn't even on the map, it was split. It had 3 partitions: Prussia, Russia, and the Habsburg dynasty carving it up for their own selves. But the Polish never gave up. And although that's important, it is a bit further back. And they did have an uprising. Well, they've had many uprisings. But when Napoleon came through, the Polish were sort of a state, a duchy. It didn't last very long, but it showed that the memory of Poland was still there. And so when the Nazis came onto the stage, Poland had already vanished before. It arose out of the ashes of World War I, narrowly defeating a Russian invasion, the Bolshevik communists. They wanted to take Warsaw, and in this brilliant, daring military victory, outnumbered, the Polish defeated this vast army, saving their country, re-establishing their independence. And I think we owe Poland a great debt of gratitude. They prevented the Bolsheviks from marching further into Europe, saving us from communism in the 1920s. In the interwar year period, Poland was much bigger than it is today. That's significant, because its borders have changed, fluctuated, even within living memory, forced further west by the Soviet regime. But before that, it was invaded from two sides in World War II by Bolsheviks and Nazis. Both horrible, evil things. I'll get to that in a minute, but what Poland learned from this, and at least I hope keeps, is yes, peace is good, but peace is not the long-term norm in any cycle of history. 1945 and the near 80 years of peace that we had, that's an aberration, that's not normal. But we in the West, especially the Anglo world, Britain and America, and also France, we seem to think that this is normal. That to have peace for 80 years means that you're going to have it forever and that nobody's going to come in and try to rule you. That's naive. It's childish to think that. It's a denial of human nature that the Polish people cannot afford to mess around with because, well, they have a border with Russia, don't they? The little enclave. Very important when looking at these maps. Poland has a 130-mile-long border with Russia. It doesn't have room for this comfort, this luxury that we in the West have enjoyed. I mean, we've become so decadent. Even from like the 1960s, the hippies. I mean, Poland doesn't have time for this nonsense. They may have to fight a full-scale invasion with Russia. We in the West learned comfort during the after-war period, but Poland learned lessons. Let's get to some of those now. Firstly, I mentioned Poland's been divided and fallen off the map a few times. So in 1792, the first of three partitions, the Russian Empire was rising. You had Prussia slowly forming a military state and the Habsburg dynasty. They looked at this corrupt, decadent Polish Commonwealth, which was fossilized, squabbling over petty cultural issues, much like we are now, and they began to divide up Poland between themselves. I mean, if you're going to be weak and argue over petty, insignificant cultural decadences, neighboring powers are not going to look too far away when they want to grow power themselves. In 1793, the next year, this happened again, and then in 1795, realizing that the decadent Polish nobility was not going to stop them, they finished up the job and Poland vanished from the map. And although Poland saw brief revolts and a brief moment of freedom with Napoleon, and in truth, Poland never really stopped revolting during the first 40 years of losing its independence, it was erased from the map for most of 123 years. Now, I mentioned World War I, and it fought a war with Ukraine after World War I, because Poland wanted its grandeur back, its old borders. When you're a great power, you don't forget what you're capable of. Poland learned a few things. Sovereignty, independence is not guaranteed, and it's most certainly not some kind of human right, as many Welsh nationalists see it. Having a state is earned. Sometimes you have to take it. I mean, the amount of revolts and revolutions and armed uprisings that Poland has had puts, I think, every other country in Europe except maybe Ukraine to shame. I counted one time since I think it was 1790 to today, they had something like 44 armed uprisings. Yeah, the Poles deserve a country, and they know it. Another key thing the Polish have learned, which we seem to have forgotten, as a nation, trust is not unconditional. I mean, when you're invaded from both Russia and Germany at the same time, countries with which they had agreements, signed papers, declaring peace, and then you're stabbed in the back, oh no, you're gonna have an army after that, forever. And they do. Military strength for them is not a courtesy, it's not a formality, and it's most certainly not aggression. It's survival. In 2024, they spent $3.5 billion on defense, more than Germany. Highest in NATO, they are serious. They are arming themselves to the teeth. If you've got a border with Russia that's over 100 miles long, on flat open land, you're going to have a strong army. And that means you take power and politics seriously. It's not protest activism. Speaking of the highest defense budget in NATO, percentage-wise at least, Poland spends 4.12% on defense annually. That's significant. They've seen what happened to Ukraine. They've got Russia right on their doorstep. They're not messing around. They don't have spoiled brats going with hammers and little keffiyehs and Palestinian flags to smash up their own arms industry. Because that's the survival of their country. They don't have the time for the luxury of spoiled brats and keffiyehs smashing up their own industry, their own country's infrastructure. And their arms industry they're building internally, but they're going globally. They're making international agreements. They're buying F-35 planes, fighter jets, 1,000 K2 tanks from South Korea. They're arming, and they're growing their military, whereas Britain, we have the smallest standing army since the Napoleonic era, under 72,000 now. I mean, it's like, how do you expect to have a fight with that? Poland is aiming for 330,000 standing army personnel by 2030. That is what it takes to be a great power. That's the level of armament you saw under Napoleonic France. Poland is serious. There is quite a contrast between Poland and Germany. For decades, Germany has felt guilty about its past, keeping defense spending under 2%. And I get it, 1989 was a bit of a moment in German history. But Poland, they didn't just have part of their country under communism. They didn't even have this euphoric moment that Germany experienced in 1989. The whole world was looking at Germany, whereas the revolution in Poland was quieter. A stark contrast even from its own past. And it was the Catholic clergy, as I said, that, were part of the head of the movement that spearheaded liberation from the communist regime. And because of this recent occupation, they understand we're not just going to magically get along and all be nice. We're not trapped in John Lennon's Imagine. It's not the end of history, like the modern universal man seems to believe, like Germany's Schroeder or England's Tony Blair. Okay, that's in the 1990s, but Macron in France, or Obama. It's not just the technocrats rule forever. They understand. Polish, because of their history, understand that Every age comes and goes. There's no end of history like Fukuyama wrote about. So what about the contrast between Poland and other countries? Well, France. In the 1960s, France went through this nuclear everything moment. And yes, it's got great nuclear energy. I mean, I'm a bit envious of the French capability for supplying its own energy and exporting it for a profit. But it's so reliant on nuclear as a deterrent that it hasn't caught up with the realities of modern warfare. What is the point of a nuclear weapon if you've got swarms of thousands of drones coming in and you don't even know which country they're coming from? Or internal terrorist cells that you imported yourself from Algeria over decades. Poland doesn't have either of those problems. It's learned from Ukraine with drone warfare, and it didn't make the silly, childish mistake of importing separate ethnic groups by the millions from cultures which are not really compatible with us in large groups. Britain, on the other hand, it used to have the biggest fleet in the world. Now it can barely float its own aircraft carriers. The aesthetic of a great power, and it's beautiful, the architecture, the ceremony, the pomp, but it's window dressing. Poland doesn't have any of that ceremony. It has a Russian bear staring down its neck, just over the other side of a fence. It doesn't have the comfort of a moat. Britain is an island. And Britain seems to have forgotten what being in a true real fight feels like. It unifies your nation. But also, what does it take to be in that fight and win? It requires that you're proud of your own culture. It requires that you're not ashamed of some colonial past and tearing down your own statues. Poland is building statues to its famous people, while Britain tears down its own heroes. Less so Germany, but France and Britain, neither of them have really within living memory, okay? World War II is still within living memory, but it's fading. None of them have had to fight for the very existence of their nation lately. The Poles have, and they may have to soon. That creates strength. Hard times create hard men. And the Poles have seen quite a few hard times. Britain especially has a frightening scarcity of hard times. It's known for its nice posh suits, which I enjoy. It's known for its fine music. But that's not going to save you from an enemy culture. Poland has a real skin in the game. They have a border with Russia. And because of that, they have American investment, missiles on their land. And Poland is learning how to use these, and actually in many cases, to build their own missiles. If you're a stock trader investing in the defense industry, Poland is a win-win. Like, they're not attacking their own defense industry with political activists and hammers. No, they're investing in their country because they're proud of it. Outside Russia, Poland, and I think Ukraine now for obvious reasons, but outside that, Poland now has the largest land army in Europe. If you're run over by German tanks, you're not going to forget it, are you? And we shouldn't forget economic growth. Poland is slated to potentially by 2035 have a higher GDP than the United Kingdom. It's growing at 2.9% a year, steady. That is an investor's wet dream. I mean, I would love to invest in the Polish economy. They know what they're doing. They're arming, they're training, they're educating, and they're having kids. Okay, their birth rate's a bit low. All of Europe is. But the government under Mr. Tusk have passed a law meaning that families of 2 children or more will pay 0% income tax. They get it. Whilst we're fighting over pronouns, they're fighting to have more kids. We're being ashamed of the nuclear family as some kind of patriarchal fascistic construct. They see it as essential to the existence of their nation. You cannot be a great power if you're talking down the traditional family. They get it. I love the Polish for this. They don't think that having images of a family of just normal people on billboards is racist. They see that as completely just normal and good, happy, and that feeds directly into their attitudes towards church and family. 87% of Poland considers itself to be Catholic. They have 0% income tax for families with 2 children or more. That's amazing. That's something that I've wanted in the West my whole life. A government that actually cares about family issues, that considers the nation, their faith, their families, their flag, their land as good things other than racist nationalism. Because they're the ones that suffered most under World War II. They understand what it was actually about. It wasn't a fight against nationalism. It was a fight against atheistic ideologies, against people who wanted to remove God and family and just normal things from life. It was a fight against evil, and evil is anti-family. One thing that has affected Poland since World War II is they're 97% ethnically Polish. The Nazis did horrible things to many people in Poland. As I mentioned, the killing. But one effect that's had is Poland is unified socially because of this high homogeneity, which means they're willing to fight a lot harder for their own nation because they're all of similar kinfolk groups. That's a seriously big threat to any enemy that you're not going to get in the West. I walk through streets in Britain and it's basically like clans of different ethnic groups. There's been street interviews, asking young people of different backgrounds if they'd be willing to fight for Britain. Almost all of the migrated groups here, their ancestors say that they will not fight for Britain. I mean, that's not a good sign. That's not meaning that you can't unify and include people. But if you have a serious enemy, what are you going to do? And France and Germany to a lesser extent, and certainly the Netherlands and Belgium, are in this situation where they've allowed basically the third worldization of their cities, with the native population moving out of the cities because they want to be around their own people. And we have activists in the West who would call that prejudice, but it's just human nature. It's group preference. And Poland doesn't see that as bad. They just see it as being human, as being normal, as being good. You can't take care of the world, but you can take care of your own family. They don't have this savior complex that we have, that, oh, well, we have to save the world from themselves. No. Save yourself. Save your family. And then maybe you might be able to save your nation if you can have kids and look after your own family. Poland gets that. Ukraine changed everything. Yes, there's a lot of refugees going into Poland, but these are very similar groups. The Ukrainian language and the Polish language are highly mutually intelligible. There's a long history between these peoples, interchanging families even. Yes, they fought a war after World War I, but they've been more friends than not. But what I'm saying is, Poland is taking in refugees of a similar, like-minded culture with a common enemy in Russia. We in the West are taking in refugees, many of whom from Muslim countries who openly want to destroy our way of life. It's well documented. And we're weakening ourselves, whilst Poland is bringing in ingenuity and innovation from Ukraine, being taught how to use drone warfare against its future enemy. That looks like the ingredients of a regional power to me, all of that I've said. So I think Poland's going to be a major player in the years to come. Europe is slowly listening to Poland. It's slowly understanding its re-industrialization, the strength of its own homogeneous culture now, and its historical links with Ukraine, enabling it to innovate in matters of warfare. But will Europe wake up before it's too late? I don't know, because here in the West, in Britain, France, Ireland, Germany, there's this cloud hanging over us of this inaction, this unwillingness to stand up for ourselves and be proud of our own cultures. That you don't have that hang up in Eastern Europe, or Romania, or Hungary. And out of those, Hungary, Romania, Poland, which all of those could be strong contenders for the regional power in decades to come. I think Poland, it learned the lessons of World War II in a way. Yes, Hungary and Romania had their own stories in that. But Poland, as I mentioned, is very unique. Poland's not caught up in this victim-oppressor narrative. It's come back from the edge of the abyss of nothingness, oblivion, and rebuilt. Its GDP is growing. Nations that suffer the most are not caught up in this victim narrative of social justice and all this nonsense, because they're going to build and move on. Japan got nuked twice. It's not funny, but I can only laugh at something so horrible. And what did they do with Nagasaki? Japan. They built it into a financial powerhouse. They moved on. They got over it. They behaved like a nation. And their new prime minister, she's going to stop the growth of mosques. She's going to reunify the concept of being a nation, keeping the polite, high trust, orderly Japanese culture. Because the Japanese stood up and said, we don't want to be like Western Europe that's imported so many people that it's destroying its own civilization. And Israel, wiped out by Rome 1900 years before re-establishing itself as a state. We could have just said, okay, let's wander endlessly and be miserable and feel oppressed. No. You rebirthed Israel. No one's ever going to stop or defeat Israel now, because after 1900 years, no more victim. No more oppressor-victim nonsense. And Poland gets this. They understand what a nation is. The Polish language has the highest percent of Latin out of any Slavic language, and it understands the root of the word nation means race, kinfolk group. And it's not got any guilt trip about being nationalist. It took a nation to fight the Nazis, and they're still here, and the Nazis are gone. But that's something that we in the West can't understand, because we literally call everything fascist, everything Nazi that resembles a nation or pride in the nation, which is, it's childish really, because it fails to understand and interpret what actually happened in World War II. The root wasn't nationalism. The root was believing that you could reinvent the world in your image and create a utopian society without God. And so I look at Poland. They're building industry. They go to church. They're passing laws to promote larger families. And they're proud of who they are. Those are all the ingredients toward becoming a great European power in the future. And I look forward to seeing how Polish history unfolds into the middle part of this century. I think they are going to have a cultural renaissance. Diolch yn fawr iawn am wylio. Thank you very much for watching. We will see you in the next episode. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button or donate by buying me a coffee. Thanks.